Welcome to The Machine, a computer science education podcast from the South East Technological University. My name is Rob O'Connor and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Computing and Mathematics here at the university. Today we are speaking with Leigh Griffin and Brendan Farrell from Red Hat. We're going to talk about the Red Hat Academy. We're going to talk about what Red Hat is a company, the kind of stuff that they do. We also have Amanda Freeman-Gater, another lecturer from the department, who has been doing some work on the Red Hat Academy. We're going to have a chat about that. Before I go any further though, I have to do a little bit of housekeeping. This is the first episode of The Machine in a while. We are working on a new series based around the computer science Leaving Cert subjects. So we'll be looking at some of the topics in that around the history, computing, computational thinking, software development methodologies, databases, ethics in computing and all of that kind of stuff. So keep your ears out on your podcatcher for that. Also, I have to say hello to a few people. A friend of mine, this is a gas one now, folks, talk about, you think nobody will listen to your podcast. I have to say, a friend of mine, Joe Harney's from Waterford. He lives in Scotland and he was in Denmark over the summer with his partner, and he was sitting down for lunch and a young man came over to him called Aiden, recognised the Waterford accent on Joe and said he was a listener to The Machine. So Aiden is, I believe, an Iranian immigrant into Denmark, and he listens to The Machine. He's learned about computer science. So hello to Aiden and his mum Zila. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Also, I want to say hello to Brett Ellingson, who is a high school teacher in Houston, Texas, who has been using The Machine as a bit of an assistive thing for some of his class. And he actually sent me a lovely email with a really good question about programming. So hello to Brett and hello to any of Brett's students. Also hello to our international listeners, obviously to our Irish listeners, but our listeners in the US, in the UK, Australia, Canada, India, Pakistan, Germany, Spain, the Philippines. And last week we were the #1 technology podcast in Turkmenistan. So hello to all the people listening. Thanks for joining us. And that's all lovely. We might see you here someday. You never know. Right, so Leigh and Brendan, first off, I'll go to Brendan first and Leigh, and I'll just get you to introduce yourselves. So what's your job title?
Oh, my job title is Engineering Manager for Red Hat. That's not what I do day to day a lot of the time. So I have two roles. One is Continuous Improvement Manager, so I look after all the agile methodology, process improvement, incredibly interesting. But I've got a great team which I don't really have to manage. But my passion is the academic outreach program. So I look after everything on the education scale from level 1 to 10. So from primary school up to research and in between, interns and TY students being really where my passion is, why I get out of bed in the morning. Yep.
That's brilliant. Leigh, yourself, what's your official job title?
The official job title, Rob, is Senior Engineering Manager.
Right.
But like Brendan, that's probably one part of the job, in that we look at talent development, we look at networking across the company. So a big part of our roles is making other parts of Red Hat, because Red Hat's huge. It's one of those traditional multinationals spanning multiple countries and different technology disciplines and areas. And we literally promote Waterford. So we're there telling people about the great stuff we're doing, the level of interactions. This podcast is one of them. And we try to attract more talent to Waterford in the form of convincing other parts of Red Hat to invest a new job here, to take on an intern here. Like Brendan, I'm heavily involved in the academic outreach. We go to primary, secondary schools. We're regular visitors down to the college when they'll have us to do a guest talk. And on the main day job, there was looking after one of the main operating systems that feed into RHEL, which is Fedora, and CentOS Stream. And we're going to be hearing a little bit more about them later as we're talking about the Academy programme. Brilliant.
And Amanda, just I suppose to introduce, you've been on the podcast before and you've come back, so we're doing something right. Maybe you just might introduce yourself, if that's all right, just briefly.
Yeah, my name is Amanda Freeman-Gater and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Computing, and I'm also the course leader of the BSc Honours in Software Systems Development. And I'm glad to say that we have quite a few students working in Red Hat from software systems development. Yeah.
And you also have been doing a bit of work on the Red Hat Academy, and we're going to be rolling it out on in a project next semester. So that's where we're kind of coming into this. Right, so lads, you were down last week. So we're recording this on the 25th of November, which is also Toy Show Day. And for anyone who's outside of Ireland, you won't understand what that reference is. But anyone inside Ireland will understand Toy Show. It's like Christmas comes early for Irish people. Where you were down last week presenting to students about the Red Hat Academy and the kind of work that you do. But I'd like to back up a moment and maybe just get you to describe who are Red Hat. Because as a company, I mean, I know who Red Hat are, Amanda knows who Red Hat are, but maybe the average layperson doesn't know Red Hat because you don't make a product that somebody, a Joe or Josephine soap will buy in a shop. At least I don't think you do. If you do now, you're going to make me look like a right fool. So Brendan or Lee, whoever would like to just maybe describe who Red Hat are and where you're kind of coming from.
Yeah, I'll jump on a very high level overview because that's how I work. I like high level overviews. I don't do depth like Lee does. We're the largest open source company in the world. 22,000 people, 105 offices. Primarily would have been always known as a Linux operating system. Lee alluded to it there with Fedora. We have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is our paid for version. So we don't own anything. It's really strange to get your head around this. We got bought out by IBM 3 years ago for 34 billion. Wall Street still haven't figured it out. The only thing on our books is our logo. Okay, we don't own anything because everything we make, we put out in open source. But obviously companies want some sort of security measures in it, update, version controls, all that. How does it work and how does it scale and all that? So that's what we do. Our business is based around service level agreements and stuff like that. So our software controls 90% of the Fortune 500 companies in the world, 100% of the telecommunication companies, 100% of the medical companies, 100% of the finance companies. So while we are very, very big, you know, we spoke about it before we came in. Our branding probably needs a bit of work on it to students and people who are listening to this podcast, what we actually do. But we are constantly voted as one of the best companies to work for, and that's why we love what we do, and this is why we're passionate. When we talk about family and people first, they actually do it. There's no issues. We're the largest remote friendly company in the world. Before the pandemic, we had 42%, I think it was, or 40%. We're now up to 70%. And in the pandemic, unlike other companies that have asked people to come back to work in their offices, we changed all our contracts to Office Flex, which means you can work at home from 0 to 5 days or come into the office. So we decided, do you know what? People are getting better value about it, a better work-life balance. Let's go with it. Let's not worry too much about the offices. Obviously, we have to address how do we keep offices open if nobody's in them and stuff like that. But that's the secondary thought. The primary thought was staff are getting best use out of working at home. It's not that we were looking for better quality, but they had a better life balance, better family balance, all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of a very high level of what we do, but we do an awful lot more than that. We have a big middleware portfolio, which I'm involved in. We do a lot with hybrid open cloud. We're the world leaders in that as well. And Lee can talk about a lot of stuff that they do, which is quite interesting as well. Some really cool stuff around automotive, which I'll let Lee talk to.
Do you want me to jump in for the depth? Seems you're the high level person. This is like a Laurel and Hardy kind of act here. They're able to pass it between us.
Go for it.
So we would have originally been known as a Linux house, right? So Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Ironically, Rob, you could have bought it in the shop. It came in physical DVDs and CD packages back in the day, and you could go in and buy them in Walmart and other stores in the US. So maybe not in shops in Ireland, but you certainly could have gotten them at one stage with it.
Okay.
But we've expanded from just being known as the Enterprise Linux platform, and we're almost the definition of full stack now. So people hear a lot about containers, about orchestration, Kubernetes. Red Hat have the enterprise version of that called OpenShift. And that's basically powering the workloads of the majority of the Fortune 100, let alone the Fortune 500. So you're in the kind of top tier or trusting that level of technology to drive their consumer adoption, and basically people are interfacing with all of our tech without even realising it. But moving further down the stack, we have the classical middleware, we have the messaging buses, we have API gateways. We cater for any needs that a customer might have. And when a customer comes in, they might take some RHEL, and now they're starting to take some more OpenShift, and now they're starting to transform their middleware. Now they're looking at the glue and the bindings between all those applications. And Red Hat are taking a box in every single one of those areas. And it's all underpinned by open source. So it means any student, any listener here can go online and take any of the Red Hat portfolio, install it themselves. If they want to form their own company and call it Blue Hat, right, might get sued for that maybe, but we'll welcome that. We'll help them. We'll support them. So, for example, we wound down CentOS Linux there 18 months ago now at this stage, and Alma Linux and Rocky Linux have spun up. We do massive collaboration with them. They're rebuilding RHEL and offering it for free. Free as in beer, as the saying goes. And it means anybody that wants to test out Enterprise Linux right now can download an instance of Rocky or Alma or CentOS Stream, which is the development kind of preview almost of RHEL to simplify it, and run it. And we welcome that and we support it. And our engineers will contribute time into the communities to help them work on that.
Would it be a fair comment? Okay, so you say Red Hat don't own anything, as in the software is all free and it's open source, so the source code is available. Would it be fair to say then that your product is the people?
100%.
The people who work on projects?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to promote you by saying that.
No,
but
and that's really why, if you talk to IBM, when you talk about why did they buy us, one of the things was OpenShift, because we are the world leaders in hybrid cloud.
So actually, I might back that up again just for a moment, because you used a lot of things there. So basically, I don't want to get too technical into cloud infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, because that'll overtake the conversation. But ye make software or you give away software and then configure software and tweak software and customize software for other companies to get on with their business, whatever that might be. As you said, telecommunications, I'm assuming finance, medical.
Yep.
So like if we walked into company X who, I don't know, make medical devices or something like that, you probably have a role to play there.
Yeah.
Would that be fair enough?
Very much. So any website that you interface with probably on a day-to-day basis, odds are there's a Red Hat tech stack somewhere behind that. But what we offer is risk mitigation. That's foundationally Red Hat's business model. Big companies don't like risk. So they could take all of this open source products and use them. And there's a risk factor. So if it breaks, they have no one to call. That's where Red Hat come in. We'll prioritize customer features, prioritize bug fixes. We're there on the other end of the phone if something goes wrong. So from a support capacity, we won't just address the issue straight away. We'll fix it longer term. We'll improve it. We'll work with the customers. But we then feed that back in. So it creates what we call a virtuous cycle. So when customer A has a problem and we fix it, the whole community benefits. But customer A get that fixed, they get to move on, they get to unblock themselves and ultimately lower their risk. And we do a whole lot more than that. We do consultancy work, we do training, we do certifications. I know we're going to be chatting about some of that as the podcast goes on. But we fundamentally bootstrap another company's technical stack by doing all of these wonderful things. And it helps other smaller companies or startups from both a mindset perspective and a safety perspective, because they know that this code base is being contributed by hundreds, by thousands of people. We mentioned OpenShift, which is the enterprise version of Kubernetes. Google is the number one contributor there. And then Red Hat, I think, are number two. We're kind of battling for second place in that. But that means anyone taking that tech stack know it's hardened. They know it's good for production because the big companies are doing it. But are they prepared to take that risk on? That becomes the question. Yeah,
but then they come to you and they get the support.
Absolutely.
So that's where. So you said software is free, but it's not trivial. It's not like going next. I've installed it now. Off I go. Yeah.
And we don't just sell the support; we can sell the hosting as well. So the whole cloud movement, software as a service, we can host the applications for you. So OpenShift, for example, have a solution called OpenShift Dedicated, where we maintain it. We provide the SREs, the sysadmins, the developers. We'll stand up your instance and we'll make sure it's maintained to that kind of 3 nines level, the 99.95 kind of percent uptime, which gives you about 4 hours a year of downtime, which is frightening when you consider what that means.
Right, well, let me ask you then about Red Hat Academy. So Red Hat's a big company, you're multinational, you've got a significant presence here in Waterford, but your colleague Sandra Moldavenu, and I hope I'm pronouncing that, I probably mangled her name, did I?
Better than me.
Yeah. Okay, right. So Sandra gave a lovely presentation to students in Waterford last week. She dialed in remotely and you were there physically present, along with a couple of graduates and interns as well from the college. What is Red Hat Academy? So Leigh or Brendan, whichever one wants to take it.
I can take it. To not answer that directly, I want to take a small step back. So I mentioned Red Hat provides training and certification services. So what that means is when a company takes on a Red Hat product, they can buy training where we're literally going to give them the skills, knowledge and attitude to succeed with that product. And on top of that, we offer capstone certifications. And these are really, really well respected in the industry. They're well recognized. They're a form of micro-credential. And it basically is proving that someone has a level of competency at an expected level that's just internationally recognized at that stage. So we provide that to companies so that they can build subject matter expertise and effectively succeed as a company with that tech stack that they bought off us. We took that model and we gave it away for free to students. That's what Red Hat Academy is foundationally. So Red Hat believes in open source, which is the whole give back, and they believe in educating people and the power of communities. So Red Hat Academy formed out of that, where they want to partner with any educational institutes. This is open to second level or high school, depending on where you are in the world, but it's more really aimed at students in third level who will get the most benefit from that. But I would love to see a second level school take this on and actually start learning the skills. So we've selected 7 of our most popular courses that are very much geared at entry level and made them freely available. So any student can log in and go and take a sysadmin course or take a Java course or an OpenShift fundamentals and layer on top of that the more advanced concepts like Ansible and automation. And all of the courseware is free. So they can log in, take it. They're on cloud-provided labs, which Red Hat cover the cost of, which means they have no need for infrastructure. They have no need for a powerful laptop. They could use a Chromebook and access these courses and have no issues with it at all. And then, if they want to, they can capstone that and take the exact same professional-grade certificate and Red Hat discounted by 50%. That's what Red Hat Academy is in a nutshell.
Excellent. So, Amanda, so we've been looking at Red Hat Academy and you've been actually doing the heavy lifting on this. So could you maybe describe the motivation that we have for looking at Red Hat Academy and how we might incorporate it into an actual module that we teach?
Well, I suppose to start with, it became clear to us a few years back that our students weren't leaving with Linux skills, and we had to try and figure a way and say, okay, what's the best way for us to move forward with our students to teach them Linux? So at the time, what we did was we chose to use Raspberry Pis first in semester 1 as a kind of an introduction to Linux for them. And then in semester 2, we were looking for something more structured. So at the time, we moved to the NDG Linux and we found that good. Can be heavy at times. The content can be heavy. So then obviously we found out then that Red Hat, who were only up the road from us, are offering the system admin course. And to be fair, given the fact that you hire quite a lot of our students as well, it was a bit of a no-brainer really for us to look into it and investigate it and see, was it a runner? So I have been looking at it. I haven't it all done yet. We've started looking into it, but to me it looks pretty easy to follow. I think the students are going to be okay with that. The labs, the environment is perfect. So yeah, I'm hoping, that when we go through it, it definitely looks lighter than what we were doing, and I think that's important. But it's going to be interesting to see how it fares out. I would hope that students are going to consider themselves sitting the certification, and I think some will. I think some will. But I mean, it's a great opportunity for them to be able to, learn from Red Hat.
We actually do have, in the last year, big insurance industries who use Red Hat Stack on the West Coast in Ireland have done industry days, and a couple of technical universities down there and spoken about the importance of having, because their stack is all Red Hat based, and they have quite a large number of students now starting to take sysadmin 1 and 2. It's not being taught, they're taking it themselves. And what they've been told is that it gets them up the ladder on the interview process by 1 or 2 steps above everybody else. So there's huge benefits for the students.
And it's not, it's not in an environment where it's very hard and confusing for the students. It's very straightforward. And why wouldn't we really use that when we have it there?
What's interesting here, to go back to the mention of the Fortune 500, the footprint Red Hat has is massive, right? And it means if 1,000 students take Red Hat Sysadmin 1, we can't hire 1,000, right? So from a company-wise, you can't just take that amount of people on. We'd love to, but you have to balance out, the number of junior hires and so on you have. But if we took 10%, the other 90% are going to get hired by companies, like Brendan said, that need those skills. You're giving yourself a leg up in any company you go into by proving you have skills and technology that they are undeniably using. And that means you're a great hire. They don't have to worry about upskilling. You'll hit the ground running. They can then worry about upskilling in your specific areas and not have to go with that level of broadness. But to go to Amanda's point on the lightness side of the courses, they're practical grounded courses. Yeah. So you're not going to sit down and get buried in theory. You're going to log in and see a Linux system. Yeah. and play around with it and check file systems and check networks and check partitions and drives. You learn by doing, and that's exactly what we want our engineers doing every single day. Some students feel terrified of Linux, that fear factor of it, because they're so used to Windows and the GUI. Try Fedora. Fedora has the Windows and the GUI, and when you're ready, go under the hood into the terminal. And that's really what the sysadmin course looks at. You're under the hood, you're in the terminal, but you still have all the upper level tools, shall we say, the GUI tools. So if you do need to configure your network through a couple of clicks, do that. So I use my Fedora laptop, I connected a VPN, and I connected Wi-Fi through the GUI. Why? Because it's easy, right? And you don't take away from that. So the practicality of it is massive. It's really massive for students.
I think as well, to add to that, like the students who went to the talk last week came back motivated to learn it. So they're learning skills that they know they're going to use in the future. From a teaching perspective, that's great. You know, that they can see the value in it.
I think there's a dancing competition going on above us. So if anyone can hear clash and banging and stuff, look, that's just nothing we can do about it. But our conversation hopefully comes through. To put on my tech agnostic hat, okay, because I suppose as an educational establishment, we're supposed to be a bit objective about tech. So with respect to the Red Hat material, saying why are we covering it in our courses, is that kind of tying ourselves to Red Hat? I'm not worried about that, because even if, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but imagine if Red Hat disappeared tomorrow, learning these kind of sysadmin skills and learning about Linux will translate to so many other different aspects of technology. So you're not just learning about Red Hat, like you can apply these skills to pretty much anything, which is what we've done in the past with the NDG Linux course. Yeah. But switching over to this might refresh it a little bit.
So Rob, do you want an interesting stat that might help the listeners there with it?
Love it. Go for it.
CentOS is derived from RHEL. So RHEL, because of the licensing agreement...
So RHEL is Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
Red Hat Enterprise Linux is RHEL. CentOS, not a lot of people know this, stands for Community Enterprise Linux.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah, not a lot of people know what the acronym is. So there, something new for everyone today.
Yeah. And Linux, like last time I checked the stats, 90-something% of the servers in the world are running some form of
You
Linux.
just started beating me to my nice little stat here.
Oh, right, sorry.
So,
no, but it's something crazy, isn't it?
So because RHEL consumes the Linux kernel, because the Linux kernel has a very specific open source license, we have to freely open the sources that we have. This is where CentOS came along historically. It's called a rebuild of RHEL. They literally take RHEL, they strip all of the branding out of it, and they produce it as it is. So it's binary compatible. So that meant that companies could install CentOS and have the same rigor as Enterprise Linux, albeit it would lag behind from an updates because you have to run through a process and so on to get it out. But the stats before we looked at winding down CentOS for CentOS Stream, and I can explain that in a few minutes, but I don't want to get too deep into the tech of it.
Yep.
90 to 92% globally of all web servers ran CentOS because it was free.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same underlying tech as the sysadmin course, which is based upon RHEL, which means any student out there that gets that skills that goes into a web dev role, they have a 92% chance of actually interfacing with that. Now CentOS has been replaced as a rebuild by Rocky Linux, by Alma Linux, and they've just taken the place of those in the web server world. So that binary compatibility is huge for it. But we've replaced this now with CentOS Stream, and that means you can install the latest development version of RHEL that's ahead of RHEL. So you're literally on the edge of your seats kind of thing with it, which is pretty cool. So that gives students an opportunity not just to base themselves on the grounded, the longer term tech. If they really want to wow employers, they can dip into what the future of RHEL is going to look like, what's going to land, which is pretty interesting.
And even for themselves in the interim, like I see a couple of our first years, some more the hardcore people have Linux running on their laptops. Which
more and more.
It is happening more and more. Like
absolutely.
It's an interesting one to see.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, we try to encourage them to set it up as a virtual machine. So try it out. If you don't like it, blast it away. But they tend to enjoy it.
And actually, that's one of the benefits when we're using it with the students, that they have the virtual environment. Absolutely. You know, like not all students have laptops or powerful laptops or whatever, so it's great that they can use this from anywhere.
That's the big selling point for me, is the cloud labs.
absolutely.
Now, we have used actually this semester, because like you mentioned about the Raspberry Pi, which we normally do our kind of computer systems one is the first semester module. We couldn't get the bloody Raspberry Pis this year because there's a global shortage of them. Like, you just can't get them for love nor money. They're saying like stock won't be back till 2024.
I reckon all your listeners are after going out and buying them
Yeah.
after hearing about what we're doing.
Yeah, they're all going off building emulating machines. They want to play Sega Mega Drive games. But yeah, it's so. But we went and we used the Red Hat Open Labs. So there's a lab.redhat.com, I think is the address off the top of my head. And there's a bunch of open access labs that are up there, and we have had their first years using those, and like they're like it's not the same environment as sysadmin 1, but it's similar. And it's going okay. They're I was a bit worried about it.
Understand.
I was a bit worried about it because I thought the Raspberry Pi was a nice introduction to the world of Linux for people who've never worked at this level at all. But the Open Labs have gone pretty well. I'm quite happy with it. So I'm confident the sysadmin 1 will be a success.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Confident, but we'll see what happens. Can we talk about the kind of material that's on sysadmin 1 specifically? Would that be okay, or do you even know what it is?
I have a good idea of it, and because it's called number 1, it's the foundational stuff. It's how do you deal with file systems? How do you wire networks up together? How do you debug and diagnose issues within your system? It looks at everything from package management through to that level of debugging that you would expect a sysadmin to do. So it gives a great grounding if you selectively follow the course and just want to be a normal user of Linux. You get a great grounding in the fundamentals. So navigating the command line is probably the best way I could describe that. But if you want to go deeper and then look at creating your little home network and wiring these machines together, you're now starting to wander into the more real and pure sysadmin or SRE or DevOps, where all the fancy titles for that more deeper sysadmin role. You really get the benefit of that.
So let me hit you with a purposefully provocative question. I'm a first year student. I don't want to be a sysadmin. I want to be a programmer. Why should I bother with this?
Brendan, do you want to take this?
Just from my own experience, when as some people would know, I came back to college quite late in life, in my 40s, and my first Linux operating system, which I won't name because it wasn't Fedora, I used, and
that's all right. Other versions exist. It's fine.
And I remember using it. I was out in TSSG, which is, as some people know, is part of the university. It's now at the Walton Institute, and I was using it for the first time. But what it taught me was understand how everything works under the hood, and it gave me a better, I suppose, structure on how I manage my workload, how I manage files when things go wrong, how to diagnose them. And you don't have to, and at that stage I was doing some front end development out in TSSG. So I didn't, I could put my hand up and say, I don't need to know how to do a system admin 1. But what it taught me was, this is how it works. It's like, I suppose you've used an analogy of a car. I drive a car, but system admin 1 tells me what happens in the engine. So if something does happen, it's very easy, very comfortable for me to move on. And that's how I looked at it when I first got into it. And when somebody said you're going to be using this, I was daunted. But it took me a day or two and I'm going, this is pretty cool. And it's actually, when you get into it, it's second nature. And I would recommend everybody do it because it has a fabulous teaching ability no matter what stream or strand you take in your career going down the road in the computer industry.
I'll give 2 reasons why. The first is you can highly customize your environment for your exact needs. And developers are very, very specific people. They have their own quirks, they have their own environment needs. You can tailor that and tweak it more than you could on OS X for people using Macs or on Windows. But the big reason as a programmer why you want to use it, how are you releasing your code? How are you shipping your code? How's your code being consumed? So in a daily cycle for most developers, you're either using a VM or a container or maybe a cloud-based image. They're all based on Linux. So having a foundational understanding of what your code is going to run in is important for optimizations.
The thing that my first years is sick of me saying this, so I sound like a broken record, but I don't think I've said it on the podcast yet. One of the main benefits that I see students getting, particularly first year students getting when they start working with the Linux environments. It's about discipline. And I don't mean beating them with a stick. Right, what I mean is a lot of the complexity of computing is hidden by GUIs. So let's just say Windows, or it doesn't matter what it is, right? Whereas, you're clicking and you're just doing, you don't really know what it is that you're actually doing. Whereas when Linux forces you to kind of, particularly when you're working at the command line, slow down and be more deliberate in your actions, and you have to kind of think about what you want to do maybe before you do it, just that little bit more than you would if you're just kind of clicking and dragging,
Yeah, it almost starts the mental mind map towards what APIs do. Because that's what I almost like in working on the command line too. You're working with very specific syntax and interactions, and then as you graduate into your developer role, you move from just writing your Hello World applications to writing API contracts to hand to another developer to consume. And because you have that experience of the command line, you almost have a dotted line understanding to what the reality of your job looks like. So it's a great mental exercise as much as a practical one.
Yeah, so API is abstract programming interface, isn't that what
application
it stands for? Application programming interface. There you go. But it's something when you're trying to get programs to talk to each other. So we don't get bogged down in that now. But basically, it all feeds in to the skills that somebody might have coming out of college to basically be a professional rather than a student. Would that be fair enough, do you think?
Yeah, I'd go with that. Yeah, and like, no matter what you graduate into, our job as employers is to break you down. Right? It's almost to break your spirit, and I say that very much tongue in cheek with physically. It. No, it's very much tongue in cheek because every company has a different tech stack. I've worked in 4 different companies. There's been 4 different tech stacks, 4 different development approaches, environments, and everything. So the college gives you a base understanding that you have to be flexible enough for. But each of those 4 have had almost pillars. And they've been best practices. They've been the use of Linux and other kind of philosophical, shall we say, software paradigms like using Agile versus Waterfall and so on. And the college can give you that insight. But whatever employer takes you on, there's an element of breaking you down to build you to be their developer in their team. And if you have some of these skills, that's one less thing that we have to train and teach, which means when you get into the workplace, it's one less thing that you have to mentally juggle because you already are solid there. That builds confidence because you have that capability already.
Amanda, with respect to this, what do you see as the best skills that we can get for our graduates? How are we preparing them for the world?
Across the courses in general?
Across the courses in general, yeah.
I often think that, a degree shows that you can learn, and it shows that you have the ability, a bit like what you're saying there, Lee, that you have the ability to pick up a new technology or a new way of doing things. And I think from our perspective, and certainly we're trying more to create problem solvers in college, we want to have students with a broad range of skills, that they can walk into these companies and be prepared. And I suppose here traditionally we focus an awful lot on labs and small lab sizes, and I suppose that's one of our strengths here at the university, and Brendan had only said to me earlier that our students, when they apply for jobs, are standing out as good if not better than other universities. And I think that's down to our practical level of work that we do with our students. And like that, with the Linux at the moment, we're on top of our game really across all our areas in the college. We're doing some AWS stuff and all of that, and we're just having our students prepared to go out and face what's there. And Brendan, you might elaborate maybe why our graduates are so fantastic.
No, I didn't put you up to this, right? So before we go any further.
It's something that I've spoken to a few lecturers recently that didn't really understand what we see in your students. So we have a fabulous engineering hub down there, and 70% of our hub are in around is all ex-SETU, WAT, SETU, whatever. So But one of the things that you do really well is you do create people who are really good problem solvers and are well able to think for themselves, and they become autonomous very quickly. So they don't need that much hand-holding. The imposter level is a bit lower in other places. So we have, like, our three main courses that we take from SETU Waterford are Applied Computing, HDIP, and in HDIP and Computer Science, and SSD. And I'm not just saying that because Amanda's sitting here and you're sitting here, Rob, but that's they're facts, they're hard facts. I deal with probably 12 different universities in Ireland. While there is some other excellent courses out there, there is nothing better, and myself and Lee can stand over this. There's nothing better. The comments coming from some of the other world-leading university students that we do have was, and this only recently, I would love to have done an Institute Technology course like the lads from Applied Computing or SSD, because they're up to speed much quicker than we are. Their class sizes, after talking to them, are much smaller. They've much better hands-on, much more access to both, Amanda and Rob here, and it makes a huge difference. It makes them better communicators as well, and better able to ask questions, and not afraid to challenge us. So graduates and interns are the lifeblood of what we do to keep our company and our culture, and that's challenges. And what we get out of SETU is people who, we only look for a couple of things: passion and growth potential, and probably the ability to communicate. And that's probably why 70%, okay, it's on our doorstep and it's probably easy to have a high figure, but it's incredibly high when you consider that this round of interns, we have close on 700 applications, and yet 70% of our staff are still from this campus. So, that's what I was taught when I came in here. The first day I came in here, I believe it was David Power says to me, we'll teach you how to teach yourself.
Yeah.
And that stuck with me from day one. And I think that and Amanda said as well, that's really what you do well, is that you're able to problem solve because you've been taught how to think and how to analyse, and it's a huge credit to you.
I think as well, just as to add there, I remember a mother ringing me one time and saying, why would Mary be better off going to WIT as we were at the time, and not go to a university? And I said, well, I've 20 in the lab. And I'll know every one of them after 12 weeks, and I'll know what their strengths are, and I'll know what their weaknesses are, you know what I mean? And I'll know them. And that's, definitely one of our benefits. They definitely get more one-on-one time with us. Yeah,
I'm going to bag that clip and use it in the next time we have a review or anything like that. So thanks very much. Very, very kind of you. I suppose, to put on my objective hat, we're not trying to knock other universities or anyone else. But look, we'd like to blow our own trumpet,
Yeah.
Just, I want to tack on something there where Brendan had. There's been a predictable growth curve for interns, and I'm going back to when I was an intern. I can look back historically on it. In a typical 8-month internship, the first 3 months are, what the hell am I doing here, right? It's that lamped rabbit look. Now, that's natural. It's their first time in industry, collaborating, new tools, culture, environment, right? Out of that 3 months, they start to stabilise then. And probably for the next 3 to 4 months, they're on this uphill journey, this trajectory. They're starting to gain confidence. The last month or two, there's almost a swagger there, right? They're confident. They hate going back to college because now they feel that they should be in industry in the workplace for it, which is super for us. That means they're at a point where we could confidently want to hire them again, right? And that becomes Brendan and my own challenge to try and get those good people in. And what we've experienced firsthand is the students coming from Institute of Technologies and our experience of doing that with different universities and different styles of lecturing. The WIT/SETU students are squeezing that down. So that first 3 months is maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Now they're starting to ramp, and instead of getting 1 to 2 months of real top performance, they're getting 3 months. Whereas other, and again, broad generalizations here, other students I've seen are on that predictable growth curve. You could draw a bell curve on it, but more of the SETU students are on the right-hand side of that bell. They're skewing to the right on it, which is wonderful for us.
But just to balance it out, that's 3 courses. I do have 15 or 16 different courses. So there is courses from, other universities in the south who have exceptional UX UI developers and absolutely brilliant and have absolutely excelled at what they do. But when it comes to the course that I named, while there is other ones out there as good, to get to Lee's point is we have this beautiful sweet spot when we're doing one-on-ones with interns, especially our graduates, that they walk out of a meeting or they walk into a meeting, you realise you're actually talking to an engineer. You're not talking to a student anymore, you're talking to an engineer. AAT students are SETU. I get used to calling it SETU. one of
You're
these
all
days.
right. We're all like that.
They do get there that little bit earlier. Now, by the end of the internship, the others have caught up. They do come in with other skills. So some of the universities come with better rounded communication skills. And that can be quite noticeable. So what I get from applied computing is amazing development code people that are just into their laptop. What you get from some other universities is they mightn't be as much into the laptop, but they've got other skills. So they might look at doing some managing Scrum ceremonies or team leads or representing the open source community. So that's what we try to, when we hire, we look for somebody different every time. We don't have a template. We do look for, we were called the out of the box thinking managers. We do look for people that other places mightn't always take, because we can see, all we look for is passion and growth potential. And, your growth potential here is really, really exceptional.
Right. Well, let me ask you to be a bit negative at the moment, or not negative, but constructive. How are we deficient? What would you like to see on our courses that currently isn't there? Besides SIS being one. Okay, but what would you like to see? Like, so you mentioned about communication. I think communication is a massive. It's a non-technical subject as such, if you know what I mean. What would you like to see from our graduates that maybe you're not seeing so far? And please be open and honest.
Communication is we set 3 objectives when we take interns and graduates, which is communication, teamwork, and technical upskilling. Now, if you get the top 2 right, the bottom one always follows. There's not a whole lot you have to do with that, because they can learn themselves. That's really cool. Communication is key, and we don't always talk about communication about just speaking. It's the ability to listen, to understand, the ability to deliver stuff, and communication through what they see, not just what they hear. The ability to write really good documentation about what they do. So I've got a couple of really brilliant programmers at the moment who've come out of here, absolutely shocking at managing themselves outside of writing brilliant code, and they don't understand that that's a career limiting issue that they need to work on, because they'll never grow beyond maybe a senior engineer. Because once you get to senior and beyond, you have to be able to communicate, well structured, well documented, and time manage yourself, and so the communication is key. On the technical side, you are starting in the last couple of years when we're trying to get it to all the universities and colleges, the use of Git. People understand it's the bedrock of a software developer's life. I mean, I think the last stat on the last thing was 88% or something of everybody is using some sort of versioning tool, but Git being the main.
So Git being a technology used for managing code repositories, GitHub, the largest code repository in the world. So the idea is that students, when or graduates present to you or other companies, they don't just give you a CV, they give you a CV and a link to a GitHub, and I won't just tell you about my code. Here it is, have a look.
It tells its own story though. So it's not just I finished a 12-week module and I've dumped it into Git, right? So you can see there's like a heat map on the homepage of the person's profile. You want to see consistent output for it. So when you're doing your project, even though you're a team of 1, practice using pull requests. So pull request in your feature, then you can roll things back, you can do version control. It becomes the bedrock for best practices. But it's not just a tool for storing code, it's a communication tool.
Yeah, and it's not just code. I mean, I had a conversation with one of our French peers, and the top arts university in Paris use it for their art students to control their stuff. There's history students and colleges in the States use it. So a lot of people are using it as a versioning tool for a lot of other stuff. So I would say to students, when you get to understand it, use it for everything, because getting used to it is primary. It is the most used tool you use when you become a software developer. And if you have that and you have a Linux certification, and the third thing probably is both of us are into process development and agile methodology and stuff like that. So a tool around that, which you can find in GitLab and GitHub as well. So you can actually manage your own work in that. If you can get to understand that as well, those 3 pieces are the bedrock of most global companies in the world. Linux, Git, and a process managing tool.
And the intersection of them is what makes an engineer. It makes an intern, it makes a student. So a student has 5-6 modules more or less. They have 5 or 6 deliverables. How do you structure your time on them? How do you prioritize them? So if they got into the habit of that in first year, it de-stresses their 4 years I think it'll definitely improve on retention. We done an academic paper, Brendan and I, with some of your colleagues. So Eamon de Lester, Pete Windle, and who else was it? Colm Dunphy. Yeah, sorry, Colm, forgetting your name there. And what we looked at was the tutor stack that the guys have. So this is like an engagement approach for kind of delivering content and seeing how the students are doing. But part of what we looked at in that was delivering academic courses in an agile manner. And what we discovered with the research is that when students get 6 weeks behind, very hard to recover. So it gives you deliberate interventions 2 to 3 weeks in, because that's how we work. We work in sprints that are roughly 2 to 3 weeks. We pause, we inspect, we adapt, and we move on. And if students got into that mindset of breaking their work down smaller, tracking things, asking for help. And that's the other skill in hidden in the communication point. Brenda mentioned feedback. One of the challenges we have with students is that proudness. I don't want to ask for help or feedback. I want to put the head down and be stubborn. And it could be something they just can't solve because we forgot to tell them something, right? Because, it's life. And no one went to ask. That becomes one of the biggest challenges that we'd like to see a student try and figure out in college.
Could I?
Yeah, Amanda, go for it.
Yeah, could I ask you, I find every year when we do the GIT classes and that, and I say, start putting up stuff, and the panic in their faces, like, I don't want a company to see what I did in first year, and I don't want them to see what I did in second year because it's going to be crap and I wouldn't be good enough, and why would I put up my stuff? And what do you say to students who would think that?
But it shows a progression, a career path. We're looking for growth potential, and that's what it shows. And if you have a terrible first year and a great third year, we're going, wow, this person can grow. It actually, you flip it on its head. It's actually more positive. It's like watching something, as my wife makes me watch dancing, what's it called, Strictly Come Dancing. You got great people in the first week, but by the end of it, it's the person who grows that wins every year. And that's the same with students. Yeah. And what we look for on that heat map is continuous use of it. So I did an interview this week with a student, not from this college, but the growth map, he says, I use Git all the time. And I opened up the growth map and there was a gap of 6 months in it. What we're looking for is that's continuous use, and don't be afraid, because we want to see how you've learned and how you grow. And if you can show that you've learned and grow, that's what we look for. When we interview people, we look for the one reason to hire somebody, not for the reason not to hire them. We look for one thing. There might be 9 things that says no, and there might be one red flag, but generally we look for one thing. And that GitHub use, from going from something that was thrown together with sticky tape and plaster to being really well defined 3-4 years down the road, that tells a massive story. And to us, that's a massive thing. And that's a case of, that's a recommended tick.
And the reality is, we're not diving into the code. You couldn't do that. You couldn't go back in that history. I mean, I don't think I'd ever get a job, and I hope Mairead Mara's listening here. Because in first year, we had to build a Java bank, bank system and all that. I built a communist bank, right, where all money went into one account and anyone could withdraw from it, right? So that wouldn't have gotten me a job if people were looking at the code. But it's the pattern, as Brendan said, using pull requests and so on. But GitHub and GitLab are where open source projects are. And that's something we touched on in the talk last week, that if students want to get the reality of the industry, search for open source projects. If they love Java, search for Java projects. Love Python, search for Python projects. Because the falseness of college is a project begins with a blank repo. They have to do a Git in it, or right-click new folder, or whatever they have to do. And you land on a tool that has thousands of contributors, millions of lines of code. That's the reality. And even just to browse that, to fork that down, to fix a typo in the documentation, that's a contribution. That's what we look for. Yeah. And that kind of breaks the myth that to graduate from a computing course, you have to be a programmer. You can fix documentation, you can do artwork in it, you can improve the UX, you can do anything you want in the project and contribute. But what that's showing us as employers, you can collaborate and communicate, because you can't just land randomly a code pull request and have it integrated without communicating with someone.
Yeah, and there's very few projects, whatever they are, start with that blue sky blank space. Everything is building on something else. So there's always legacy things that need to be worked with. It's actually one of the notes I made from the questions that students brought up at the thing last week, and we've actually covered most of them. But the thing about, somebody asked the question, what about non-coders? I don't want to be a programmer. How is this of benefit to me? That's Brendan is putting up his hand and going, yes, that's me.
I haven't written a line of code in 5 years. I don't know who your listenership is.
but it's true though. I mean, code is important, but it's not the be all and end all of computing science. I have
I won't call out names, ex-students of Amanda who came into me and were brilliant interns in developing and programming, and realised within 2 or 3 months that this wasn't a career that she wanted. It wasn't that she wasn't capable. She's my number 2 now, and absolutely exceptional, and she's known right up to CEO level at the work that she does, and she's with me not even 2 years. We also have, other students as well who have come back here and lectured. The same thing, came in really good and realised this is not for me, and went on and now running product security teams. We have, I don't know, we were talking about this before we came in here this morning. We were talking about, we get challenged on this because we're an engineering house down here, but we've marketing people hired, we've business people hired, we UX UI developer people hired, we have process people hired, we have documentation. So people often get bogged down on what we do as a software engineer, but there's 10,000 software engineers in Red Hat, and not all of them write code. But there's another 12,000 people in our industry, in our company, that don't actually write code. So more people don't write code in our company than do, and yet we're a software development house. So there's lots of roles out there, and this year we'll have seen huge growth that eventually people are starting to buy into the intern program outside software development. So a lot of the interviews going on this week and next week are around roles that don't involve software development. So you will see that over the next year when we interact more with the SETU, that we have a lot more roles coming, probably 12 to 15 that have nothing to do with software development.
And we have this wonderful mechanism in Red Hat. We call it the OPT, and it stands for Organisation, Passion and Talent. And you basically draw 3 circles. And in one circle, you put your talents. Talents are what you're good at, right? They normally end in ing. They're like skills. So I'm good at dancing or singing, but that means they're testable, right? So if I say, Rob, you're good at singing, belt out a song and we'll kind of grade you, right? So I like football. I'm okay at it. I'm not a Premier League player. I won't be in the World Cup, right? But that's still a skill for me. Passions are what you're passionate about. Nobody in this planet can tell you what you're passionate about. You have to know that yourself. But when you put them on a Venn diagram and there's an overlap and you have both a passion and a talent, that becomes something that's a focal point for you. And your job as a student and our job as managers is to move a person into that organisational role where they're using their passions and talents every single day. Now, you take students going through their 4 years. It's terrifying to realise that coding isn't for you. You're maybe 1 year in, 2 years in, it could be 4 years in. It took me 6-7 years after I graduated to realise coding wasn't for me. And again, terrifying, right? But you look then at what your skills and your passions are. And to build anything, you need multiple skills. You build a house, you can't have all bricklayers, you can't have all plumbers, can't have all electricians as an analogy. You have to have that mix of skills. The number one growing role that we've struggled to hire in the last couple of years is technical writing. That's
Right.
people that are literally writing the documentation. When you land on any tool that you want to use, there's docs. They're writing the docs. They understand enough about tech that they're comfortable to write about it and distill it down that your granny could understand it. That's a skill in and of itself. And if they have a second language, so French, Spanish, German, whatever, even better, because now you're getting docs that are multilingual for people. Then you have people that are very visual and creative, and there's roles there for them, for UX, for UI. There's a whole host of roles that don't even exist anymore. There's a host of roles that don't exist yet that will be coming in the future.
Yeah.
So when I started working, Scrum Master wasn't a role. I spent 3 years in that role. So I couldn't have predicted what that future meant. But for me, I kept monitoring my passions and talents and moved my career where I could add value.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're lucky we work for a company that allow us to work on our passions. I mean, Leigh hired me. It's his fault. He hired me as an engineering manager and gave me a incredibly tough team the day I walked in the door. We won't talk about that now. But my passion is an academic outreach program, and that's it. And I'm very lucky to have the support of my managers and senior vice presidents and all that allow me to do what I do. There's not many companies, they would say you were hired for this role and you're stuck at it. So we have a thing called Grow Your Own Career. And it is up to you to come to us and say, and it's up to us then to help you grow it. So you come to us and say, look, this is the avenue I really want to go. I don't want to do this. And that's what we do. That's what we do paid today. That is really what our engineering role title actually means. Our job is, as somebody said to me, explain in simple language what your job is. I'm a high paid concierge. My job is just to make things right for you and the team. That's all my job is. And that's what the company's about. So if you look at our application form for interns, you'll see in the bottom line, while we put in this list, all of it is not required. And actually, if you've got none of it, but you think Red Hat is the right company for you to work in, please apply anyway. While we put up a spec, we always caveat it that we just want people who will make good what we call red hatters. That's what we look for. So we had a great example last year from somebody from another university doing UX UI, but one of Leigh's managers was sitting on the panel with me for experience. He's just a new manager and his role was software engineering role. And I was interviewing for UX UI role from the same course in UCC, and they're an absolutely brilliant students. But I only had one role left and we were down to the last two who were brilliant. And he sat there and he goes, I need to hire that girl. She's absolutely brilliant. And I said, but she's not a software engineer. He said, no, leave it with me. He goes back to his manager, gets the spec changed, comes back and hires her. Absolutely amazing. That girl already is they're actually trying to give her a full-time contract a year before she finishes college. Yeah. She's absolutely amazing. So we try to identify talent and put them in the right place. So please never be afraid to apply to us because there's a role somewhere. And if we don't have it, we know somebody who does.
So if I was to try and summarise what we've discussed today, so in terms of skills for graduates, for your own kind of career and your own progression beyond, obviously beyond college, we don't want to get you so far, you have to go beyond that. You're saying a lot of soft skills, communication, organisation, very, very important. From a purely practical perspective, make sure you have your GitHub repo or your Bitbook repo or whatever it is that you're using. Make sure that's well stocked by the time you get to kind of third year, fourth year, and don't be worried about putting up silly things in first year. Doesn't matter.
Consistently used.
Yeah, consistently used. Yeah, so you want to, again, when you click on the insights, you see lots of stuff. I always see that with fourth years. When you're doing fourth year projects, first thing I do, click on the GitHub. Oh, it all went up 1 week ago, did it? Amazing. But as if I see somebody is making commits all the way along, I know, well, they've been doing something on this.
They're structured.
Yeah, they've got some sort of a consistency to them. In terms of other types of skills that are relevant and beneficial for somebody going into the IT industry, there's your stuff you do in college, but then there's also material that's up on Red Hat Academy. A lot of it is freely available and a whole variety of different things. If somebody wanted to look at Red Hat Academy, what's the address for that?
I think it's academy.redhat.com or just Google for Red Hat Academy.
Yeah. You can't go wrong. And if you're an SETU student in first year of computing course, you're going to be doing it next semester. So there you go. Beyond that, are there any other kind of points that I've missed or anything that you'd like to...
I think there's just one thing to add to it. Know where you're going to go. Have an idea. Now, that's scary saying, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? But if you know there's a sector or an area and you identify as a back-end engineer or UX engineer, start building skills in those areas because the college, they're trying to predict a 4 or 5 year cycle for people, right? And like Amanda said, you're coming out as problem solvers, you're coming out more as a generalist, and then the company will shape you. But you shape your own career, you lead your own career. So if you know you're going to be working in UX, learn a bit of Adobe on the side, learn Inkscape on the side. If you know you want to be a back-end engineer in Java or Python, find an open source project, look at the tooling around it. Ironically enough, the bulk of the time our software engineers spend every day is working in tools. It's not just writing vanilla code in an IDE. You're working with the tooling around it. And college courses can't get into that level of depth because tooling changes like the weather. Every year or two there's a new fancy tool out there. But if the student boxes clever, looks at what job specs are out there, looks at what the flavour of the month is for tools, learn them. Tools are very, very simple to pick up. Integrate them into your projects. It should wow your lecturers for marks because now you're starting to hit the grading rubric, the higher points on it where you're going beyond the classical box that you've been given. But you're starting to shape the role that you want to move into, which makes it so easy for Brendan and I and other hiring managers to go, this person is super. They've really gone the extra mile.
Can I just briefly add to that? Just that I know the tech meetups are back.
Oh, so this is the Waterford Tech meetups. Leigh, you're one of the people involved in this, isn't it? Yeah.
And I'm encouraging, as I do every year. Now, we didn't have it with COVID, but the first years like that. Go to the tech meetups. Some of the conversations will go over your head. It's new technologies. It's stuff that you're not sure about.
They go over my head.
Yeah. And I said that. They go over, some of them will go over my head. But be down there, be listening, be starting to put things together about where technology is going, and I think that's a great way for them to do what you're saying, Leigh.
The tech meetup is on the second Tuesday of every single month, except for February because the Lovebirds wanted to move it to Wednesday because that's on Valentine's Day, right? But in general, the tech meetups will have a talk on something that is an expert's view of the world, but they try and distill it down for the ordinary folks like myself that mightn't get that. what you pick up from that as a bonus, the real point of the meetups is the community. Networking with people, chatting with people, connecting on LinkedIn, connecting on Twitter. That's probably something we didn't mention. That's a big thing that we look at as well. The day you enter college, you start a footprint, whether you realize it or not, right? So having your GitHub, having your Twitter, creating your LinkedIn, they're all representations of you that project the kind of engineer that we want to hire. You got to box clever with them, right? So have a professional looking email, have a professional looking GitHub handle. I'm not going to name names, and someone might say, "Oh, I'm recognizing my GitHub handle there." We've seen some crazy ones, from wildly inappropriate to quirky. Like mine is L Griffin. Boring, right? But it's easy. It's an identifier with it, right? And the same with your LinkedIn. Have a professional looking photo, not a picture you 6 beers deep in Oktoberfest, right? That's great. That's for Facebook. Understand the difference between those. But using the likes of the meetup to expand your LinkedIn network, because Waterford, the Southeast, Ireland, it's very, very small. At some stage, you might meet a person sitting opposite you in an interview, go, "Oh yeah, I saw you at the meetup. Geez, that was a great talk last month." And Brendan and I, we get a laugh off this every time we go down there.
Yeah, we call it the meerkat reaction. When we walk into the room, they stop up and the head swivels. But our LinkedIn blows up. And we've hired, I can tell you, a colossal amount of people that come to us to intern and graduate programs have met us at some stage at tech meetups. And not just us, the people out in Walton Institute and DataWorks and all the other great companies around. They meet up down there, and it is about, it's about, look, the industry is about people. We can sit here all day and talk about technology, but it's about, I always say to them, the first day they come in, you collect people. And that's what the tech meetups, you need people to get you out of a hole or get you a job or help you or you help them. It's a cycle. We can have all technology in the world, but it's about people. It's about, and what I mean by that is about your LinkedIn profile. It's about having a good showing on it. It's about being polite and going to tech meetups and stuff like that. It's like, people reaching out to us at 1 o'clock in the morning on LinkedIn and my phone beeping off. It's not really where I want to be, but we're still back down to, good communication, and it boils back down to that. But just to add one other thing that we've noticed with a lot of students lately, which is pretty cool, Kubernetes OpenShift is built on Golang. And we see a lot of your students come into us now who've taken Go courses online, maybe only basic ones, understanding ones, because the chances are, certainly when they come into my side of the house, 90% of the engineers are working on Go at the moment. Now, if you're good at Java, you can pick up pretty much any other language out there. But we are seeing, so it's pretty cool. They're starting to listen. They're starting to go, what do I need? People are reaching out to us on LinkedIn going, what would you recommend I learn that'll get me going? And Go is one of the easier ones that you can get up to speed. And when we see that on a CV, you go, okay, that's pretty cool. They're thinking outside the box.
Yeah. Brilliant. Lads, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming down and chatting to myself and Amanda here in the college today. I'm glad you got the fry in. I'm glad you got coffee in. If somebody wanted to find out more about you or Red Hat, what's the best place to go?
Yeah,
LinkedIn probably?
We're both on LinkedIn. So Leigh Griffin and Brendan O'Farrell on LinkedIn. We're both on Twitter as well. Now, Twitter, you'll get a random shoutings about the World Cup and all the other crazy stuff going on. But you'll get a lot of info on tech. And follow the tweets that people are sending out. Look at the hashtags, look at the handles that they're using, and use that to kind of discover more about Red Hat, about tech, and about the likes of the meetup and so on.
Yeah. We're happy for people to, drop us an email and want to come up to the office and talk and have a coffee for 15 minutes, half an hour. I mean, we have an open door policy as well as an open source policy. So I know Amanda's brought students up as well and that. So we're really happy. Just even, we do have people that come up, and we've had a couple of your students, Rob, who've come up in the last 6 months, knocked on the door, and if we're free, we do, but obviously a lot of time we aren't. But they drop us an email or they even ring reception up there. We're happy for them to come up and talk to us. And, we do get parents come up. As Amanda said, why would my kid want to get into that? So we're happy for that as well. So our job is to give back to the community in Waterford and Ireland at a bigger scale, and we're happy to do that. So it's the favourite part of our job, so we're lucky.
And if they mention the podcast, we'll give them a free coffee when just to see that they listen.
Brilliant. And I suppose if you want to find Amanda or myself, we're on the setu.ie website. I'm Robert.O'Connor at setu.ie if you use that new email address.
I'm Amanda.Freeman-Gater setu.ie.
But again, Google search will bring us up. The podcast does have a Twitter account for now, machine_podcast. But I've set up a personal Mastodon instance, so I'm Rob O'Connor at mastodon.ie. If anyone is using Mastodon, just any of you using that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I've even stopped using Twitter at the moment.
Yeah, you're probably no harm. Probably no harm. But look, you'll find us if you want to go and find us. And you can leave a nice review for the podcast as well online. That'll be helpful. And we'll be back with more episodes soon. And we are going to be looking at the computer science leaving cert subject. So we'll be digging in on some of that kind of stuff there. So now, folks, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.